At my birthday party, she stood up and said, "I'm polyamorous now. Accept it or we're over." I just smiled and said, "I support your journey." Then I introduced her to my parents, both divorce attorneys who specialize in infidelity cases. When they handed her papers for the apartment, lease violation, and unauthorized subletting charge, there's something uniquely humiliating about being blindsided with relationship-altering news at your own birthday party. There's something oddly satisfying about watching someone who thinks they're holding all the cards suddenly realize they've been playing an entirely different game. That I'm Alex, 31M, and up until 3 months ago, I thought I was in a committed relationship with Mia, 29F. We'd been together for just over 2 years and have been living together for the past 6 months. The apartment was in my name, something that would later turn out to matter, since I'd signed the lease before we even started dating. When Mia moved in, we talked about adding her to it, but she was between jobs at the time and didn't want the responsibility. We agreed to revisit it once things stabilized. Mia was creative, spontaneous, and passionate. All the things I love about her. I'm the opposite, analytical, structured, a software engineer at a fintech company. We balanced each other, or so I thought. What I didn't realize back then was that Mia's spontaneity often drifted into impulsiveness, and her passion sometimes blurred into selfishness. The beginning of the end started on my 31st birthday, last April. I planned a small get-together at our apartment. Just some close friends, my sister, and my parents who were driving in from the suburbs. Nothing over the top, just food, drinks, and laughter. Mia had been distant for a couple of weeks, glued to her phone, taking calls in another room. I noticed, but I brushed it off as stress from her new marketing job. I should have paid more attention to why parents arrived early to help set up. They've always been supportive but can be intimidating. Both are seasoned divorce attorneys who've seen the worst of human behavior. My dad handles finances. My mom deals with infidelity cases. Together, they run a small but prestigious firm, and they have a radar for bullshit that could detect dishonesty through walls. The party started off great. Friends were laughing, music was playing, and everything felt normal. Except Mia. She kept checking her phone, glancing at the door. Then, around 9 p.m., the doorbell rang. She practically sprinted to open it. A tall, bearded guy walked in. "Everyone, this is Julian," Mia said, her hand resting on his arm. Casually, but unmistakably intimate. The room went silent. I stood there, drink in hand, trying to make sense of what was happening. "He's a colleague from work," she added, either missing the tension or pretending not to see it. My friend Dave, ever the peacekeeper, awkwardly offered Julian a beer, and the party stumbled forward. A few minutes later, Mia pulled me into our bedroom. "We need to talk," she said, eyes bright with some kind of nervous excitement. "I've been doing a lot of self-discovery lately," she continued, "and I've realized something important about myself." My stomach sank. "I'm polyamorous, Alex. This is who I truly am. I've been fighting it for years, but meeting Julian helped me understand myself. He's poly too, and he's shown me that it's possible to love more than one person." I stared at her, stunned. "So, you brought a guy you're sleeping with to my birthday party to tell me you want an open relationship?" She frowned. "It's not about sex. It's about emotional connection. It's not an open relationship. It's polyamory. There's a difference. Did it not occur to you," I asked slowly, "that maybe this conversation should have happened before you started seeing him? Or at least not while my parents are in the next room?" She sighed, like I was the unreasonable one. "I knew you'd react this way. That's why I wanted Julian here, to help explain how beautiful polyamory can be when everyone's on board. I was just nervous to bring it up sooner." "And if I'm not on board?" I asked. She met my eyes without hesitation. "Then we're done, Alex. I can't hide who I am anymore." And just like that, something inside me went still. I saw our relationship clearly for the first time, not how I wished it was, but how it really was. This wasn't about polyamory. It was about control. "I need some time to think," I said. "Of course," she replied easily, already reaching for the door. "Take all the time you need. Julian and I will be outside when you're ready." I sat on the bed for a few minutes, just breathing, then went back to the living room. Mia and Julian were huddled together on the couch. My friends gave me uneasy looks. My parents, both seasoned professionals at spotting relationship disasters, exchanged a glance that said everything. When my mom asked quietly, "Is everything okay?" I gave her the short version. Her face hardened. She looked at my dad. He gave a small nod, the kind he usually gave right before building a case. They'd seen this scenario play out hundreds of times in their professional lives, though usually after a marriage, not before. The party fizzled out quickly after that. Once the guests left, I pulled Mia aside. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told her, keeping my voice calm. "If this is really who you are, I don't want to stand in your way." Relief washed over her face. "Thank you for understanding, Alex. This doesn't have to change things between us. It could actually make us stronger. Julian's lease is ending soon, and he's been struggling to find something affordable. I was thinking maybe he could crash here sometimes while he looks for a new place." The audacity was almost impressive. Still, instead of arguing, I simply nodded. "That makes sense," I said evenly. "We should all sit down and talk about expectations and boundaries. Why don't you both come over for dinner tomorrow night? My parents will still be in town. They can join us." Her smile faltered. "Your parents? I'm not sure that's the best idea for our first polyamory discussion. They're important to me, Mia. If this is going to work, everyone needs to be comfortable with each other." She hesitated, then reluctantly agreed. That night, as Mia slept, or pretended to, I lay awake planning my next steps. I wasn't interested in polyamory. Not because I think it's wrong, but because it wasn't what I wanted for myself. More than that, I wasn't interested in being with someone who ambushed me with ultimatums and called it self-discovery. The next morning, while Mia was in the shower, I sat down with my parents over coffee. "I need your help," I said quietly. Not as my parents, as people who understand relationships and boundaries. I explained everything. How Mia had moved in without being added to the lease, how I suspected she'd been bringing Julian over while I was at work. I'd noticed unfamiliar items appearing and disappearing. Even our doorman had mentioned that Mia's friend had been around several times. And then there was the way she dropped her polyamory announcement. Not as a conversation, but as a declaration that why parents listen carefully, only interrupting to ask clarifying questions. Then my father leaned forward. "What do you want, Alex?" "I want out," I said immediately. "But I want to do it right." They both nodded. My mom suggested consulting a colleague, Rachel, who specialized in landlord-tenant law, to clarify my options. One quick call later, and Rachel laid it out plainly. Since Mia isn't on the lease but has been living there for 6 months, she's established tenancy rights in most jurisdictions, Rachel explained over the phone. However, if she's violating the lease by bringing in another occupant or subletting without consent, that gives you grounds to act. Armed with that information, my parents and I reviewed the lease together. Sure enough, there were clear sections prohibiting unauthorized occupants and subletting. Dinner that evening was a masterclass in polite strategy. My parents greeted Julian warmly, asking about his work and hobbies as if this were any ordinary social visit. Mia seemed relieved, interpreting their kindness as acceptance. After dinner, we all moved to the living room with drinks. That's when my mom, ever the tactician, shifted the tone. "So, Julian," she began pleasantly, "Alex mentioned you might be staying here occasionally?" Julian smiled. "Yeah, my lease ends soon, and apartment hunting in the city's been brutal. Mia suggested I could crash here while I look for something." "That's very generous," my dad said, smiling. "Though it does raise a few practical questions. Alex, doesn't your lease have guest and occupancy restrictions?" I nodded thoughtfully. "Now that you mention it, I think it does." My mom reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "Actually, I asked Alex to show us his lease earlier today. Professional curiosity." She flipped it open. It's quite specific about unauthorized occupants. Section 8.3 prohibits anyone not on the lease from residing in or regularly staying at the apartment. Julian blinked, suddenly uncertain. "I'd just be staying occasionally." "Define occasionally," my mom asked gently. Mia jumped in. "This feels very legalistic. We're just talking about Julian spending a few nights a week here while he looks for an apartment." "A few nights a week would constitute regular occupancy under most lease terms," my mom replied, still perfectly composed. And Alex mentioned the doorman has already noticed Julian visiting frequently. Mia's face went pale. The doorman keeps track? It's a security building, I explained. They log visitors, not detailed records, but enough to notice patterns. My dad took over. There's also the matter of subletting. Section 11.2 explicitly prohibits assigning or renting any portion of the premises without written consent from the landlord. I'm not subletting anything, Mia protested. Actually, my mom said smoothly, you might be. Julian, didn't you mention earlier that you've been contributing to household expenses when you stay over? Julian hesitated, then nodded. Julian admitted quietly, just a few $100s to help with utilities. Mia said it was only fair since I've been staying over regularly. Mia shot him a look that could have melted steel. That could be considered payment for accommodation, my dad said evenly, which constitutes unauthorized subletting. My mom slid a document across the table. This is a draft notice outlining potential lease violations. It hasn't been filed, but it shows what could be raised with the landlord if this continues. And this, my dad added, handing over another paper, summarizes tenancy rights and the proper procedure for vacating a shared space. Our colleague Rachel prepared it. Silence filled the room. Mia stared at the papers, realization dawning. You planned this, she whispered. I nodded. Not the part where you cheated on me and called it polyamory. But everything after that, yes. I never cheated, she protested weakly. Ethical polyamory is discussed and agreed upon, I said. You started another relationship in secret, then presented it as an ultimatum. That's just cheating with extra steps. Julian looked uneasy. Mia told me you two had already talked about opening up, that you were okay with it. She lied to you too, I told him. Last night was the first I'd heard of any of this. Julian stood up. I think I should go. That's best, my mom said politely. But you should know staying here regularly without being on the lease could cause legal issues. After he left, Mia exploded. How dare you ambush me like this? Involving your parents and threatening me with legal action. More insane than you bringing your lover to my birthday party? I asked calmly. I was being honest about who I am. No, I said. You were justifying your cheating. My dad cleared his throat. Legalities aside, Mia, you'll need to find another place to live. Continuing to share this space isn't viable. You can't just kick me out, she snapped. I have rights. You do, my mom agreed. That's why we're offering you 30 days to relocate. Alex will refund your portion of rent. And where am I supposed to go? My mom smiled faintly. Julian still has his place for a few weeks. Maybe stay there, since you're a couple now. Mia glared but said nothing. This isn't about the lease, she finally said. It's revenge. No, it's consequences. We negotiated the details. She agreed to move out within 2 weeks in exchange for a rent refund and signed a simple written agreement. That night, she left to stay with a friend. Over the next 2 weeks, she returned a few times to collect her things. Julian later reached out to apologize. Mia admitted she never talked to you before starting things with me, he wrote. I'd never have gotten involved if I'd known. He even offered to return the money he'd paid. I told him to keep it. He'd been misled, in the 3 months since. I've had time to reflect. I don't regret how I handled it. I could have exploded or sought revenge, but instead I set firm boundaries, legal and emotional. Word eventually got back that Mia and Julian broke up after she started seeing someone else behind his back. So much for ethical polyamory. My parents, ever practical, suggested I move when my lease ends. Too many memories, my mom said. She's right. Last week, Mia emailed, half apology, half accusation, asking to meet for coffee. I didn't respond. Some people say I was too harsh, but Mia didn't ask for a discussion. She handed me an ultimatum. Accept this or we're done. So I accepted. We were done. In the end, I simply showed Mia that ultimatums work both ways. Clear up a few things. Yes, the lease concerns were real. My building has strict occupancy rules for insurance and security. We never filed anything with the landlord. The documents my parents brought were informational, outlining possible violations and tenancy rights. They weren't legal threats, just clarity. Julian wasn't a bad guy. He'd been misled too. Mia told him I was fine with their relationship and his staying at the apartment. When he learned the truth, he apologized and backed out immediately. I don't have a problem with ethical polyamory. My issue was Mia starting another relationship behind my back, then calling it self-discovery and giving me an ultimatum to accept it. Yes, letting her move in without being on the lease was a mistake. I planned to add her later, but never followed through.